If you want to publish a book, but you feel stuck, out of time, and you don't know what to do next, then it's time to finish the damn book. Here's your host, Susie Schaefer.
Welcome to this episode of Finish the Damn Book. I'm your host, Susie Schaefer. My guest today is Michelle White, a book designer with MMW Books, specializing in nonfiction books in the mind, body, spirit genre, including inspirational memoirs and guidance for living a healthy and happy life. She is dedicated to helping authors publish transformational books that inspire a better future. Michelle brings a rare blend of artistic vision and technical expertise to deliver powerful covers and elegant page designs that bring out the unique personality of each book. With over 2 decades of experience and hundreds of titles to her credit, her high-quality designs have garnered numerous awards. She is grateful every day for the chance to help authors see their books come to life. When not designing books, Michelle enjoys spending time outdoors, walking a trail, browsing a farmer's market, or simply sitting by the pond in her backyard with a good book. Her best days are the ones spent playing with her lovely grandchildren. She also likes traveling and learning new things like Spanish and watercolor painting. Welcome, Michelle.
Hi, Susie. It's great to be here.
How long have you been designing books, and which part of that process brings you the most joy?
I started designing books in the late 90s for a company that I worked for. I did textbooks, and I went out on my own in like 2002, I think it was. And I've been focusing on books as much as I can. In the beginning, I had to take whatever design work I could, like any new business. But then I was able to focus on just books for the last maybe 15 years now.
Wow. It goes fast, doesn't it? Like time just seems to speed up and it's flying by right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You happen to know how many books total you've worked on?
No.
I know.
No idea.
I get asked that question too, and I'm like, I have no idea because I've never actually done like a count of how many books.
I recently looked up the last few years, and it comes to about 30 new books a year.
Mm-hmm.
In recent years. Now, in addition to that, there's, this author wants some little change in her book, so there's a lot of, going back to ones that I had done before with changes, but new books, maybe about 30 a year lately.
Yeah. And I think that's about the same for me. I usually am running about 20 clients at any given time, but there's such a range. And as you know, it can be a book that is just getting started with the design phase of it. It could be a book that's even just still in editing, but I might be just doing a bestseller campaign for an author that published through a hybrid, such as Acorn Publishing, or even they're just doing a second edition. So there's such a variety that I think that's the cool thing, that it allows us to take a larger roster of clients at any given time.
Oh, yeah. And there's always some that are in proofing, the client has it for a week because they're proofreading it, or there's others that are waiting for their press proof, or it's in editing. So there's all these different stages where it's not actually on my desk at the time, so that I can juggle, 10 books at a time,
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So what are some of the misconceptions that authors have about book design?
Misconceptions. I think the biggest one I get is when they come with a cover that they maybe designed in Canva, or they hired someone from Fiverr to do it, and it's just a front cover, and they haven't even yet decided what size the book is supposed to be, or even thought about the back cover or the spine, or, they think that's it. Okay, I've got this cover. This is what it looks like. There's so much more involved than that,
Exactly.
So, then I'll take whether it's an idea or a finished cover, and then work them through the next stages to get it ready for printing.
Right. And I think a lot of authors don't realize too that there's different sizing, different templates when you're using KDP versus Ingram Spark. And we can't actually size the cover until we have the page count, because the spine will be different. There's so many of these little things. And honestly, I couldn't do it without you.
Well, and I appreciate what you do for the clients, helping them get all their ducks in a row, to get their account set up and bestseller campaigns and all those details that you take care of is something I don't have to do for those clients. I do that for a lot of clients, that come in. I don't so much work with their accounts, but I advise them, here's where you go. You need to get your ISBN. Here's how you do it. Here's why, those kind of things where when I'm working with you, I don't have to deal with any of that.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, the front and back matter of a book, that's some of the more important pieces. And a
Yeah.
lot of times that is something that isn't really thought about by the author or given, they don't spend a lot of time on it. And, generally you and I'll come into the process and say, oh, well, we need to have, well, obviously a really good copyright page for one, but, do you want an introduction? Do you want a table of contents? What about your acknowledgments? What about your long bio? Do you need a sales page for your business? There's all these other parts that I think often are not considered when an author is writing a book.
Yeah, yeah. And that's where we come in, where we can advise them rather than if they're doing it on their own. A lot of times they're, okay, well, I can learn how to upload the file and I can learn how to, format it according to the right standards and everything. But they don't know what information they're missing because they don't know to look it up, So,
Right.
it's turning to people who have experience that have done this so many times. We've seen the mistakes, we've fixed the mistakes, we've troubleshooted, technological issues and all that. So,
Yeah, literally we can do it in our sleep.
yeah, I do.
I do too, actually. I'm always like working through things in my head.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so then you have a series of books that you published. What are those books
Mhm.
and who is your targeted reader?
Okay. I published a series called Keynote Classics. I've always liked to read the classics. I figure if a book is still popular 150 years after it's written, it's got to be good, right?
Right.
But they can be difficult to read. There's cultural references that are no longer make any sense, we're not familiar with. And, different things that were happening in the world at the time that the book was written that just go right over our head nowadays because we don't know that. So I find I could help people to discover all these things before they read the book without finding out, without spoilers of what the story is. Because a lot of times you buy a classic book and there's professional academic analysis in the front of it and things like that. Some of the big publishers always do that. But you can't read that without spoiling what happens in the book because it goes into detail about symbols and all this. So I came up with this series that helps people get all that information before they start. And I put like the author bios, cultural references, some things, themes and motifs to look for that help you understand what the book is about. And also like study questions at the end. So you can use them for book clubs. You could use them in the classroom or just if you want, if you've never read Scarlet Letter or you read it and you didn't get it, you can go back and look at, get all this more deeper information about the novel before you read it.
I love that. And so who are you targeting these towards, college students or people who just love the classics? Like what do you think that your
yes
biggest
and
reader?
yes
Yes.
Yeah, really anybody who wants to get a better understanding of the classic lit. They've used in the classroom, teachers or school systems. There's a school system in Puerto Rico that buys them in bulk every year.
Wow.
And yeah, so they could be used that way, or anybody who just wants to read it. If you haven't read Picture of Dorian Gray, that's one of my big sellers. There's a lot in that book that you'd miss if you just read it cover to cover nowadays, things that you wouldn't understand.
Right. So if our listeners today said, hey, I want to get my hands on those books, the best way they can probably find them is to go on Amazon and look you up, and you're under Michelle M. White, correct?
Yes, it would be a direct route if they just searched Keynote Classics.
Oh,
that's the imprint that they're in, because Michelle White, that's a common name.
So. Okay. And I noticed too that you have the books. I love the styling you did for the covers of the books because they're all of these jewel tones. So, it's all part of this collection. It's really well done. I love it, but it still has the feel of the classic cover.
Yeah, I used images from the old books, but then I brightened them up so it doesn't, when you look at that cover on Amazon, you know that's not actually an old book, but it's got that styling.
Yeah,
So
I think it's cool. And I think it's brilliant, honestly, that you
thank you.
would do
Thank you.
something like that. It's more than just Cliff Notes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Cliff Notes tell you the story. You read that if you don't want to read the novel. You
right.
know, it tells you everything you need to know to pass a test on it.
Yeah.
But this is for people who are really interested in what's going on. What was Oscar Wilde thinking when he wrote this? Why did he, have these things happen? And what's he talking about? The Yellow Book, all these things that you wouldn't understand, not knowing the history of that time period.
Yeah. Okay. Now you've inspired me to go and read all the classics again, but through Keynote Classics, because I want that other information too.
Yeah. Yeah. There's 13 of them out right now.
Wow. That's awesome. I love that. Now, what do you think is the biggest challenge you see facing the publishing industry today?
I think the biggest thing right now is whether or not AI is legal to
Mm,
source your books. You publish a book and AI gets trained on it. Is that fair? Is that fair use? Is that, your personal copyright, which you have a copyright on it, but is it right for them to be able to use it? Maybe you want that, maybe you don't. Maybe, that's a super gray area and there's a lot of controversy around it. And publishers need to, it's in the courts, they're working it out, but that's a real challenge.
yeah.
And not only for written content, but for image content as
Yes.
well. You people will do their book covers on using AI, and you can't really do that. I mean, you can, you know, you might not, run afoul of any copyright laws, but it's pretty risky.
Yeah. And personally, I don't like the AI generated images for book covers. I think they look AI generated. And I
Yeah,
think that it
yeah,
just,
they're not there yet.
you're better off to use somebody like you, a real cover designer that actually has access to stock images, that has a design background that can actually make the book look unique and different instead of this just AI generated. I feel like it's lazy. That sounds
Yeah,
awful.
it can be used in a good way for inspiration, brainstorming, things like that. It has definite purpose, a good use that's legitimate. But if I take pictures or I draw illustrations and I put them on a stock image site, I should get paid for my work. And I just generate a free AI picture that's using somebody's photography
Mm-hmm.
for training, I just don't feel like that's right. We're not going to have any creative work if people aren't going to be able to make money off their work.
True. And that's also true for the writing aspect too. I think AI is
Yeah,
great for editing, but not for creating content. It needs to be human created content.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. Now, you and I have had some conversations about the accessibility for ebooks. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that is and how that works?
Okay. Starting in June, this past June, in the EU, they passed a law that says that all ebooks published from that point forward have to be accessible, meaning for low vision readers, they have to be able to go to voice to text so that they can understand what it says. There has to be high enough contrast. You've got to be able to put them in. There's like a specific font for if you're dyslexic that makes it easier to read. All these things are required now. It was always probably a pretty good idea to do it before, because that's a huge market for your book, people who can't see well. So now it's required in the EU. It's probably a matter of time before it's required here. Technically, if you're a small publisher, if you make, I don't know the exact number, I think it's like $1 or $2 million less than that a year, you're not technically required to do it. But more and more platforms and distributors are requiring it anyway, even if the law doesn't.
Right.
You try to upload it for sale and they'll kick it back and say your ebook is not accessible. It's
Yes.
not going to work. So we have to, as designers or ebook conversion people, if they're more on the technical end than the creative end, we all have to know how to do these, or how to get them done or who to go to get it done so that our books are available to more people so that everyone can read them.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, to our listeners, you heard it here first. If you're doing an ebook, make sure that you're working with a designer or someone who's doing your ebook conversion that can actually walk you through what the accessibility process is, because there are things like descriptions for images and things like that. And it's important that we do follow suit, because we're much better to address this now and head it off rather than next year, if it becomes required, for example, in the US, us have to go back and redo books. So yeah, hopefully
We
everyone's taking note.
tech Technically, we will eventually have to redo all of our ebooks. The EU has a grandfather clause for anything that was published before June 2025, but there is a date, I think it might be 2029, where all of the backlist has to be converted to, if you want to sell an ebook, even if you published it 10 years ago, it's got to be converted to accessible.
Which
ebooks.
when Amazon gets on board with that, they will basically say, you have X amount of days to redo your ebook and re-upload it, or we're taking it down. So we'll see that across the board.
Yeah.
It's always fun when we get these new challenges in the industry. It's like, oh, great, there's another thing that we have to do. And, this is why it's important for us to constantly be learning, because things change all the time.
Yeah, that's what ebooks were in the first place when they came out, and maybe 10 years ago or so, when everybody started doing their book as both ebook and print. We had to learn how to do that.
Right. Yeah, just another learning curve. So let's talk about intuition. When was the time that you used your intuition as part of your journey as becoming a book designer? And when did you use your intuition, or maybe when you didn't?
I think creativity is really close to intuition. I mean,
Yeah, it is.
they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, like, for me, it's about mixing intuition with the knowledge of what works and doesn't for, book design. So, like, say a client comes to me with an image they want to use on their cover, and I just like, no, that's not perfect for your book, for whatever various reason. Sometimes it's hard to explain why. There's intuition there too, and I have to decide, okay, am I going to just do it the way they want, or am I going to present them, with other options? Usually I do both. I'll say, okay, here's what you asked for. And I'll do the best I can with it. This is how we can make it work possibly, and then I'll give them other options and explain why, one is going to work better for their book. Maybe it's the genre, maybe the picture isn't clear enough, things like that.
Yeah. And I think that was what makes you a great designer, is that you do use your intuition. You also understand the industry, what kinds of book covers are popular, what sells, what doesn't. And so you being able to use your creative abilities, your intuition, and your experience is kind of that winning combination.
Yeah. I mean, not to say I'm not ever wrong. There was one book that you and I worked on together where the author wanted her photo on the cover. And we both advised her that's not really done, unless you're Oprah Winfrey or,
Right.
you have a recognizable face. People just don't, they're just not drawn to that because they don't know who you are. And that means nothing to them, so we gave her so many different versions of the book.
I'm trying to
What I'm
remember
talking
who that
about?
was. And I don't actually remember
Alexandra.
Now. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, and eventually she gave us some photos, and they were beautiful pictures, and she's laughing on it, and it ended up to be a beautiful book cover. We did use her photo. So,
yes,
sometimes.
Yeah. So we kind of missed the mark at the beginning on that one, because we thought, is she a big enough name to actually put her photo on the cover? And actually, ended up being probably one of my favorite covers that you have ever designed for her. So, yeah.
It's won awards.
Yes.
Yeah,
won awards. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So how do you feel if we pull some cards?
Okay. I'm ready.
Okay. So do you have a question that you'd like to ask, something that pertains to maybe a question that our listeners have?
I think, well, because we've talked so much about technology today, that maybe it's like, how can we keep an open mind, be ready to learn the next new thing, because it's not going to stop. Things are changing really fast right now.
Really
So maybe
fast.
there's something that we could know, or a mindset that could help with
Yeah.
that.
And I love the whole idea of balancing creativity with technology, because we love technology. I mean, just for example, we're on Zoom right now. And I remember back during the pandemic, Zoom became the way for us to communicate. And, some of us were doing it before because we don't live in the same place, but it just became the norm. And we all had to learn that technology because that was the way we were able to communicate. And now it's kind of just the way it works. So the first card we got is at 27. So 2 plus 7 reduces to a 9. 9 is the end of a cycle. So I think it's very appropriate. I'm getting that we're at the end of an era of not fully embracing technology, because I think we're going to have to, right? So the card is exchanging gifts, and it's pink. It's got a little ballerina fairy on it. And this reminds me of the ballerinas that were on our jewelry boxes as little kids.
Yeah.
And she's playing with a leopard here. And the exchanging gifts is really about us being able to learn from each other. Thank goodness you told me about the accessibility thing, because I didn't know that was happening. And you were like, hey, did you know about this? And then we had this round and round conversation about it. And we're like, wow, we need to learn this. We need to tell people about this so that people are prepared. And we know that there's going to be an opportunity, obviously in the next year or two, that we've got to go back to all of our old clients and say, hey, we need to do this. Is this something that you want to do versus getting your ebook taken down? So this exchanging gifts is really about us working together, learning from each other, and putting this behind us, because like you said, the technology is going to continue. And if we don't embrace it, we're going to get passed by. So this is interesting. 45 card, another 9. So this is really kind of hammering this theme home. The card is time to go. So, and she's running down it looks like almost like a dock towards a doorway in the distance. Kind of gives me a Cinderella vibe of, we need to get on this, because, with AI and technology and new regulations and all these things happening, we have to be the ones to understand this information and support our clients, our authors, so that they don't run into that pitfall. We don't want somebody to, for example, lose their ebook or use AI and get docked for it, right? We don't want that to happen. And then the next card is a 19, which is a 10. So 10 means we're already past the point of technology is coming, technology is here. Like, this is part of it. And the card is flexible. This is so perfect. So she's doing a handstand on an egg. An egg represents fertility, creativity, the birth of new ideas. And she's doing a handstand on it. And it's saying we have to remain flexible, because we're going to have some stops and starts. We're going to have to, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, as we learn the new technology and apply it to our day-to-day lives, but also apply it to this industry in publishing specifically. So I really love these 3 cards, because this is saying, hey, we've got to be able to be ready and to get on board with this, because we have a huge opportunity to share what we know, and as we learn with our clients, and help them move forward, versus people getting stuck and frustrated. So
Right. That's great.
I love
Love
that.
that.
That is so awesome. Okay, so what other wisdom do you want to share? Do you have anything else that you think that our listeners would benefit from?
I think the biggest thing is, don't try to do it alone. It's like what you said about sharing. 10 years ago, maybe you could learn what you needed to know to publish on Amazon by yourself. Now, if you try, more power to you.
Yes.
You're going to be spending a lot of time doing that. And if you're a writer, maybe you'd rather be writing your next book and having somebody who knows all the ins and outs, who knows things that you wouldn't think to ask. Don't try to reinvent the wheel when you've got professionals who know what they're doing. They can help you out and probably make your book better and more saleable than it was if you
Yeah,
try to do everything alone.
absolutely. And the fact that those of us in this industry have tons of connections. So if you need an editor, if you know what I mean, if you need a book design, if you need someone to actually do the accessibility for your ebook, whatever that may be, an audiobook. I can't even tell you how many times I get questions about audiobooks. We are the people that have those resources, and we're generally speaking, we're very good about sharing our resources and making those connections for people, because we want to make sure that they're, not wasting time trying to figure out who's legit and who's not. I
Right.
think
And
that's a big part of it.
Like, if I know that my client is going to want to do an audiobook in the future, or maybe they don't know how to set up their accounts, where I would send them to you or to someone else. After all these years in this industry, we all kind of know each other and work together, and we give each other referrals all the time. I've got editors, I've got, and you do too, people that do all the different aspects of design, that we can introduce to our authors that need all this.
Yeah, I think that's true. And it's funny too, because I just got off a call with someone who I'm working with, and lovely woman, but she pared down my proposal to really just a few things that she wanted to hire me to do. And we were on the call, and I said, this is all the things that I would be doing for you if you had just taken the full package.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, because she's confused, she's a little frustrated, and I'm like, so I'm doing my best to walk her through it, but it's hard. It's really hard. And I don't think people understand sometimes that it can be a challenge. And if you're trying to do your book in addition to work a job and have a family and doing all the other things, it can be frustrating. So,
and people aren't aware of how many different things are involved that all have to come together with the right timing and the right people to get your book out there. There's a lot of different aspects that you may not be aware of. You think, I wrote the book, I'm done, let's do this. That's not how it works.
If only it were that easy.
Right.
Yeah. If only, right? And what's the best way that people can connect with you?
You can find me on my website. It's mmwbooks.com. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn. I think Facebook, it's under MMW Book Design, and on LinkedIn it's MMW Books. So just look up MMW Books and I'll pop up.
Okay, that's perfect. And I do love the fact that on your LinkedIn channel, you have tons of great posts about tips on publishing, the reasons why, for this kind of cover design versus that. There's just a lot of really great information that you put out. So I very much appreciate that.
Yeah, I have a LinkedIn newsletter called Designing Your Story, and that's like twice a month you get and you did a couple of guest posts on it for me.
I did. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, that's awesome. Thanks for being here, Michelle. This has been fun.
Yeah, it is. Thank you so much for letting me do this.
And if you found this interesting, I encourage you to join me for the next episode, and be sure to subscribe. Each week, one lucky listener who subscribes and posts a review on Apple Podcasts or iTunes will be entered into a drawing for the grand prize, a private VIP day with me valued at $25,000. So be sure to subscribe and post a review. Until then, keep on writing so you can finish the damn book. We'll see you next time.
So that's it for today's episode of Finish the Damn Book. Head on over to wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe to the show. One lucky listener every single week that posts a review on Apple Podcasts or iTunes will win a chance in the grand prize drawing to win a $25,000 value private VIP day with Susie Schaefer herself. Head on over to finishthedamnbookpodcast.com and pick up a free copy of Susie's gift. And join us on the next episode.